I've kind of wanted to do something like this for a while, but I always told myself it was a bad idea. This is the lists that should not be. Top 10 anime badasses. Now, the reason this is the list that should not be is that I don't really think it's a great idea to be making a top 10 list. Everyone and their mother does top 10 lists. YouTube is full of them. Mine is going to be one of the most amateur out there, because I don't really know how to do any video editing, and I don't much care to learn. So there's not going to be any clips from the shows, there's not going to be any even still images of the characters. It's just going to be me rambling in front of a camera, like the rest of my videos. Also, I'm not really an otaku. I'm an anime fan, but I'm not really an otaku, and I have a pretty limited scope of anime to work with. But still, here I am. What finally pushed me over the top to do this is that on thatguywiththeglasses.com, 2 different people posted top 10 lists of this exact same topic within a week of each other, and both their lists left me in the mood for a serious rebuttal. So, a few caveats before we start. First and foremost, this is all a matter of personal opinion, and people have varied opinions on what badass even means. For my part, I will say that I will almost always take a Griffith over a Guts. Seeing an enormous, snarling macho man with bulging muscles take down an entire army is pretty cool, but it's also kind of a foregone conclusion. Seeing a small, effeminate man who's always smiling happily take down that same army is so much more awesome. And that kind of theme is going to play heavily on my interpretation of what is and is not badass, and to what extent it is badass. Second, this is going to be spoilerific. I'm going to reference whatever details or scenes I think make a compelling argument, and if you're worried about spoilers, then you should bail out now, or at least skip ahead if there's a series you don't want spoiled on here. Third, as seems to be becoming tradition, I'm going to limit this to 1 character per series or franchise, to make for a more diverse list, And fourth, and finally, I know that manga and anime are relatively distinct media, but if I've read a manga and I know that there is an anime that follows it more or less faithfully, plus some spoilers and minus some gore, I'm going to consider its characters eligible for this list. So here we go, starting off with an honorable mention, Alita from Battle Angel Alita. And the only reason Alita is an honorable mention is that I don't know if there's an anime of it, or if there is, how closely it follows the manga. But if there is a reasonably faithful anime adaptation of Alita out there, then she definitely belongs on this list. Alita is one of the least immediately threatening characters on this list. She's a small, slender build, a pretty little face, and she was enough moved by a young man's attempts to protect her that she played the damsel in distress for him to buff up his ego. But she doesn't need protection. Alita is among the most powerful cyborgs in her world, and later on she even gets upgraded. She's an unstoppable force of destruction, wrapped in the most dainty feminine package you've ever seen. And if there isn't a good anime version of her out there, I would love to see that. But on to the actual list. Number 10 is D from Vampire Hunter D. Now this character was on the Distressed Watchers list as well, so I'm going to go ahead and plagiarize that guy for a bit. When you can point to an entire letter of the alphabet and say, "That's mine, I call it," that is badass. Aside from that, D has a great look and a great hat, and 2 entire movies full of mind-blowing action. Both movies give D plenty of opportunities to take on truly fearsome opponents, and he does so with a quiet confidence that I can't get enough of. I personally prefer the American-made sequel Bloodlust. I think it had a much better art design and a somewhat better plot than the original. Also, D's theme music for that is epic. D is very much the quiet, stoic type, and while that can be hard to do well, I think he's got it just right. He doesn't feel brooding or angsty most of the time, just calm and professional. The situation is well under control. Not even the most freakish enemies or intense battles seem to faze him. He just projects this aura of, been there, done that. He can get emotional when he really needs to, and the lack of emotion the rest of the time just makes those instances all the more intense. Still, he can be a little dull, so he can't really take any place higher than 10. Number 9, Natsu from Fairy Tail. Now, Fairy Tail is kind of the new up-and-coming hit of the shonen world, and Natsu is really not any different from your typical shonen protagonist. A carefree, confident teenager who provides a lot of comic relief and grows attached to people very quickly. In return, they grow attached to him, and when the chips are down and the people he cares about are at risk, he goes ballistic. So, this is all over the place. What makes him so special? First off, I don't care how often you use that character archetype. It will remain awesome. In fact, Natsu is the lowest ranking of 3 on this list who fit that description. Well, one of those doesn't quite fit, but close enough. Second, Natsu was raised by a dragon. What else do I have to say? Come on, guys, raised by a freaking dragon. Okay, well, he was also taught magic by that dragon, which allows him to emulate a dragon's abilities in a fight. In other words, he's basically a dragon in human form, which is sweet. Third, the dragon's disappearance several years ago has provided some good motivation for Natsu's behavior. It's all well and good to say that your protagonist goes to these insane lengths for his friends because that's just the kind of guy he is, but I think it's more interesting if you can give it more depth than that. In Natsu's case, the feeling of being abandoned seems to be one of his worst experiences, and the sense of family the Fairy Tail Guild has given him is vital. He'll go up against the most impossible odds to rescue or protect that family, both out of indebtedness and because he refuses to abandon them, as Igneel seems to have abandoned him. Likewise, when he sees anyone who doesn't have this same affinity for their fellow guild members, it really pisses him off. Like, no matter what their intents or how they were treating this before, it was always sort of a friendly rivalry. And then, one of them betrays or doesn't seem to care about the guild members, and suddenly it's serious. Now this is a real fight. And then there's another Dragon Slayer, Gazelle, who has this same kind of backstory. It's apparently a running theme of all the Dragon Slayers, where they were raised by dragons but then suddenly abandoned several years ago. And when he finds this out, he instantly considers Gazelle a friend. Never mind that, he's been fighting Gazelle and they just got through with this huge epic brawl. We're friends now. Fourth, the look. Natsu's wardrobe has a lot of long, flowing things, like he's got a scarf, he's got a long vest coat thing that can billow around and just really be great to look at. And even when there's no wind or anything to move his clothes, it's a great outfit that shows off a great build. Natsu is lean but still muscular. Most of the guys in Fairy Tail are drawn really quite well. The women lean too much to fan service, in my opinion. Fifth, the fire. I think this sort of personality really goes well with fire, or at least fiery imagery. But I don't see it used with fire hardly very much, I don't get it. Well, but Natsu does fire. He burns things. It's awesome! And finally, a personal motive that probably doesn't extend to anyone else. He reminds me quite a bit of a fiery, dragon-themed badass I wrote in high school, and who I'm still quite fond of. In fact, recently, presented with the opportunity to write the character again, I've noted that he's starting to resemble Natsu more and more, a trend I don't care to reverse.